Joel Embiid, Karl Anthony Towns, and Kevin Durant. 3 players, historic night of NBA action. Who had the best night? Whose night was the best from a historic perspective? Whose night was the best from a winning perspective? Let's break it down, starting with Joel Embiid. The Sixers winning in a game against the Spurs. It seemed like it was a runaway. And with Embiid, very early on, it was apparent that this was going to be a special night. He was hitting everything, and for people who wanted to know, what was it like when Wilt Chamberlain played basketball? It's something that I'll never get to see. But tonight is perhaps the closest we ever got. Wilt Chamberlain going against a bunch of guys who weren't nearly as big as him, who weren't nearly as strong. He scored 100 points in an NBA regular season game. He has the record for the most points scored in a game. And tonight we saw Joel Embiid, a big man similar to Wilt Chamberlain, adapted to today's version of the NBA, score 70 points against one of the worst teams in the league, the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs have Victor Wembanyama, the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. But he was like a turnstile, unable to stop Joel Embiid on every single possession. Zach Collins, the backup, unable to stop Joel Embiid on any possessions. Any time that they could get the ball to Embiid inside, or even if Embiid took the possession at the top of the key, it was a virtual guarantee that he was going to score. He set the franchise record for the most points scored in a game with 70 points, more than any other Sixer in history, breaking Wilt Chamberlain's record as a Sixer as well. But Wilt still has the 100-point record. There came a point in the game where San Antonio felt like, whoa, we have the opportunity to spoil. We can play spoiler. We can steal this game. They didn't really have a chance. 70 points from Joel Embiid in an absolutely historic night of basketball. But if you had to cook up a recipe for when Joel Embiid could do this, these were the circumstances. Embiid has scored 30 points in something like 20 straight games. He's routinely scoring 40. If I told you to select an NBA team to play against the Sixers, where Joel Embiid could theoretically score 70 points in a ballgame, the Spurs would be on the short list for the team that he could do that against. Specifically, on the rookie season of Victor Wembanyama, when anyone can score on him. Especially a player of Joel Embiid's caliber, where Victor Wembanyama is like a beanpole that Joel Embiid could blow over. He could wave his arm and Wembanyama would fall down. That was what it looked like last night. If there was any team that Joel Embiid was going to score 70 points against, it was the San Antonio Spurs. Nonetheless, a great accomplishment. Also, they got the victory. Karl Anthony Towns scores 62 points. In a Timberwolves loss to the Charlotte Hornets. This was a game where Anthony Edwards was absent, only scoring 9 points. How many people in the world would have bet that Anthony Edwards wasn't going to score double-digit points in this game against the Charlotte Hornets? Nobody. 0%. No one would ever take that bet. But Karl Anthony Towns seems to make up for it by scoring 62. Let's go quarter by quarter and see how many points did Karl Anthony Towns score in each quarter of this NBA game. In the first quarter, Karl Anthony Towns started off extremely hot. He was +6, scoring 22 points. 22 points in the first quarter. He doubled up on that In the second quarter, as a +3, scoring another 22 points. So he has 44 points at halftime. In the third quarter, he started dropping off, only scoring another 14 points. So 44 and 14, 58 points. 58 points through 3 quarters. At this point, you'd be thinking Karl Anthony Towns is going to go for 70 points against a team like Charlotte. But what does he do in the fourth quarter? In the fourth quarter, Karl Anthony Towns scores a grand total of 4 points to finish with 62. 4 points in the fourth quarter when the game was on the line. In the fourth quarter, Karl Anthony Towns was minus 16. To make matters worse, in the waning seconds of the ballgame, with Minnesota down by 3, instead of going to Anthony Edwards, their premier player, their superstar, they got greedy and they went to Karl Anthony Towns and they said, "This is your night." And he took an epically horrendous 3-point shot, which didn't come close. And he can go take his 62 points and brag about it to the rest of the league. But this was a 62-point embarrassment. To lose to Charlotte on a night when you score 62 points, to lose as one of the best teams in the NBA, the best team in the Western Conference, which is the toughest conference in the NBA, to lose to a bottom 5 team like Charlotte. Charlotte loses 2/3 of their games. Minnesota wins 2/3 of their games. On a night when Karl Anthony Towns scores 62 points to lose that game? For him to take a terrible shot at the buzzer? For him to only score 4 points in the fourth quarter? I would take those 62 points of Karl Anthony Towns and trade him to the first team that would take him off my hands. Our third player, we have Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns were playing against the Chicago Bulls. In my pregame prediction on yesterday's podcast, I said that Phoenix is very tough to beat at home. They play very well in the fourth quarter on their home court. Chicago was up by 15 points in the fourth quarter of this ball game. I saw the score, and I thought in my head, there's still a really good chance that the Suns are going to win this because I've watched the Suns in person many times, and I've seen the way they play throughout the first 3 quarters and the way they play on their home court in the fourth quarter. And I knew they still had a shot to win this thing. Kevin Durant. In the first quarter, he scored 5 points. In the second quarter, he scored 8 points. Only 13 points at halftime. In the third quarter, he scored another 13 points. But in the fourth quarter, he scored 17 points to seal the deal. Maybe Kevin Durant only scored 43 points, 19 less than 62, 27 less than 70. But in many ways, he had the best night because he had a team that was down by 15 points at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and he put that Phoenix Suns team on his back, and he said, "We need victories. We're on a win streak right now, and we need this game." Devin Booker wasn't getting it done on the night, and he put this team on his back on offense, on defense. He scored 43 points and also distributed the ball extremely well, getting a lot of open dunks to Drew Eubanks in the fourth quarter. Must have had 2 or 3 dunks when it really counted on pocket passes, bounce passes from Kevin Durant, who was attracting the attention. Durant hitting tough three-pointers. Durant inside, outside, put the Phoenix Suns on his back and turned a loss, snatched the team from the jaws of defeat, and brought victory for Phoenix, and their fans got to go home a happy bunch. 3 games, 3 players. Karl Anthony Towns coming up small when it mattered most. Joel Embiid scoring 70 points, a franchise record. But like Wilt Chamberlain, he will come up short in the playoffs. And Kevin Durant putting the team on his back, turning a loss into a victory, and showing how to play on your home court in the fourth quarter. Outside of that, it was a largely predictable night. You had the Cleveland Cavaliers beating the Orlando Magic by 27 points. In my pregame show, I predicted this. The Cavaliers are hot. I knew the Magic were at home, but it was pretty obvious to me that the Cavaliers were going to win this game. The Sixers beat the Spurs. The Bucks beat the Pistons. The Grizzlies beat the Raptors. I thought the Raptors would win that game, but I guess I just underestimated how bad the Raptors are, and perhaps the Grizzlies bench players are a little bit better than I thought. Hornets beat the Timberwolves. Celtics beat the Mavericks. Suns, as we discussed, beating the Bulls by 2. And the Kings with a 15-point victory over the Atlanta Hawks at home, like they should, because the Kings have a better roster. If you go player for player with the Sacramento Kings and the Atlanta Hawks, it's not really close. And then you take into account that the Hawks were without Trae Young. Oh, the Sacramento Kings had better win that ball game. They had better. But on what was a historic night of basketball, some epic individual performances, some good team performances, and another epic loss by Minnesota, who is now standing at 30-13 and only half a game ahead of the Thunder and the Denver Nuggets, losing their last 2 games, while the Thunder and the Nuggets won the last 2 games. This Minnesota team is trending in the wrong direction, and they have an opportunity before the trade deadline to capitalize and take Karl Anthony Towns and trade him away. And that would be a very beautiful day in Minnesota if they could get that done. Coming up tonight on January 23rd, 2024, we have 5 games of basketball. We have the Nuggets going to Indiana to play the Pacers in what should be a good game if Tyrese Halliburton is on the court, along with Pascal Siakam. We have to see if can they get the chemistry, can they get rolling. The Knicks are going to go not very far from MSG. They're going to go to Brooklyn and face the Nets, who just are coming off of an epic collapse against the Los Angeles Clippers. You would have to guess that's going to continue, and the Knicks should be able to take this victory in Brooklyn. You have the Jazz going against the Pelicans. Jazz, after their super hot streak, have come back down to earth in the last couple of games. The Pelicans had a good showing in their last one. This should be a good game in New Orleans. The Trailblazers are going to Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City, the last time they played the Trailblazers, beat them by over 65 points. So who knows what's going to happen tonight? The Thunder could beat them by 100. And then you have the showdown of Los Angeles. You have the Lakers going against the Clippers. Clippers are officially the home team. Lakers versus Clippers. Lakers got a victory, I believe, against Portland in their last one. Let's see if they can go back-to-back. The Clippers have won their last 2 games, including an epic fourth-quarter comeback against the Brooklyn Nets. And we'll see if they can keep up the heat in their pursuit of the 1 seed. You have the Lakers just fighting to get into the playoffs, to stay in the playoffs. And you have the Clippers fighting in Los Angeles for the best team in the league. That'll just about do it for us today. Very exciting night. last night. We should have another great night tonight. Again, you can reach out to the show at nbavenue at yahoo.com. That's NBAVENUE at yahoo.com with your questions and comments. You can also follow us on social, on Twitter at NBAV, NBAVE, and on Facebook. You can also find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the major podcast networks. And remember, we are NBAV, your NBA venue for a great time every time, and we'll catch you on the next one.